Before we jump off into our first exercise, I want to cover a couple of practice tips and concepts that I'll use throughout these lessons just so that we kind of lay the foundation for the things that I'm going to be talking about. First thing is kind of a frame of mind what I think of when I think of working on technique. I think that you should have a little bit of time that you dedicate to really focusing on your technique, whether it's 5 minutes a day or 10 minutes a day, or you can go crazy and do 45 minutes a day. As you focus on your hands, really pay attention to the sounds that you're making out of either the drum or the practice pad or whatever you're playing on. You want to make sure that you're listening intently to what's happening, that you're watching your hands, and you're being very critical of yourself all the way through. That kind of focused practice time will reap the highest benefits. One thing that obviously needs to be said is that you really should go out and find a private teacher if you can. These video lessons are great, and what we're able to accomplish these days in the new millennium, if you will, is pretty astounding, the amount of information that you can get from a CD-ROM or from the internet. But it really doesn't take the place of a private teacher. Another recommendation I make to all of my students is to get a good pair of drumsticks. And it sounds like kind of a no-brainer, but I've seen kids who are really trying to work on their technique, and they're trying to get better, and they're playing with a really old pair of rock and roll drumsticks that are kind of chewed up, and maybe one of them's a little bit cracked, and so they're spending a lot of time spinning their wheels because they don't have the tools that they need to get better. I really recommend the Vic First sticks because the sticks are pitch paired and weight sorted. So what that means is basically you're going to get a pair of sticks that sound exactly the same and feel exactly the same. So these pieces of wood are not going to get in your way of getting better technique as we go along. Something else I like to recommend, I don't even recommend it, I say it's a necessity, is that all percussionists should have a metronome. And I'm not really talking about those little credit card metronomes. I'm talking about something that you can actually hear while you're playing. We'll be using this a lot during these video lessons. I like metronomes that you can subdivide the beat with, either eighth notes or sixteenths or triplets. That's why I like these metronomes. They're loud enough for me to hear while I'm playing, and I can dial in a subdivision. I can quickly change tempos. For drummers, there is absolutely, next to your pair of sticks and your drum, there's nothing that's more important than buying a metronome and practicing with it all the time. And another recommendation is to get away from the metronome sometimes. That sounds kind of funny because I just recommend that you always practice with a metronome. But sometimes I recommend that my students get some headphones and find their favorite tune from the radio and play along with those tunes. Because sometimes listening to music, which is generally recorded in a studio with a click track anyway, has a completely different feel to it, and you can find a groove with what you're playing. So if playing with the metronome starts to get old to you, then get back off of the metronome for a while and find a good pair of headphones and plug in and start listening to your favorite music and playing your exercise along with something that you really enjoy listening to. One more concept that you need to know when you're working on technique is a concept that I call muscle memory. Essentially, the concept is this. You can't play an exercise one time and expect it to do you any good whatsoever. Essentially, what you have to do with all of these exercises, any kind of technique program that you use, whether it's rudiments or these type of exercises, is that you have to play it long enough for your muscles to start learning what actions are actually happening every time that you're hitting the drum. So if I'm working on a specific technique, if I just do it a couple of times, you've benefited nothing from it. So every one of these exercises, even though I'll cover them and you'll get the basis of understanding, really, if you want to get the most out of it, you need to play them 1,000,000 times. And I'm talking 1,000,000 times at a bunch of different tempos and a bunch of different dynamic levels. That's the only way that your muscles are going to memorize the actions that need to happen for your hands to produce it. So if you're not really dedicating some practice time to focusing on your technique and you're not really playing these things over and over and over, then you're not going to get a whole lot out of them. And the whole goal here is make your hands do anything you want them to do, anytime you want them to do it.